What's up, everyone? Coach Ben podcast here on the Jiu-Jitsu Mag podcast network. I'm here with Jim. Jim, introduce our guest, please.
Good morning, Ben. Well, today is a very special day because we have an ESPN analyst, and he is the gangster from Westland, Oregon, the bad guy, the people's champ, and now he's the promoter extraordinaire of Submission Underground. It is one Chael P. Sonnen, and the P stands for iconic. Good morning, Chael. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, fellas. Quite an introduction. I appreciate that. How are you guys?
We're doing well considering the pandemic, that's for sure, because jiu-jitsu has taken a hit. The grappling community as a whole has taken a hit. And you're one of the few guys that are actually pushing the envelope during this pandemic and giving the people something to watch.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I take it from there? Was there a question in there somewhere?
What was your question, Jim?
Yeah,
No.
Started off in there, Jim, and that's not easy. There are so many moving parts, and I have to tell you, the rules on us, now they've kind of settled in, but if you were to back up when we started doing this right away, they were changing us every day. We could have 250 people in a room, and that number dropped to 50 people in a room, and then it went to 25, it went to 10, it settled in on 8. But to put on a show that takes 50 people to put on with only 8 in a room, I mean, I will tell you, it was an incredible puzzle that was incredibly difficult to solve. We had to bring in technology that I didn't even know existed, but we found it. We stayed in compliance, and we're moving forward.
Excellent, Chael. Let me real quick, just in case any listeners don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about Submission Underground. It's a live event on UFC Fight Pass, August 30th, 6 p.m. Eastern. And so in this event, you know, I've watched pretty much every single one, every single Submission Underground I've watched. I have a couple questions for you, Chael. First of all, you are in that room every time the show goes on, right? Where exactly are you? Are you in your house? Are you in the stadium? Where are you?
So I actually undo this room. This room all comes apart, and I take it to the venue. Then the venue comes with multiple rooms. I go into a totally separate room, which again, per the rules, I'm not even on the floor. I can't be on the floor. We have a doctor, a referee, and then the red corner, the blue corner. We get up to 8, but we only needed 4. Everything else is done by remote, everything. So the cords that drag in and down the hallway into a separate building where I am, or even the cameras themselves, somebody, you know, runs them by a joystick from a truck that's in a different location. But now I unpack it all. I unpack it all and take it over to wherever we're going.
Got it. So you are at the event every time, right?
I'm at the event. Yep.
You're at the event. Got it. Okay. All right, Chael. So last Submission Underground, there was a little bit of controversy. So let's start from the main event, right? So I never really heard your opinion on the main event. So me and Jim talked about it. We have our opinions, but I really like to hear your opinion on, you know, just the controversy, right? So for people that don't know, what happened was at the last Submission Underground 16, Craig Jones was in a body triangle from the back, and Mason Fowler had a kind of like a rear naked choke. It was like a short choke, cranked his neck a little bit, and Craig basically groaned a little bit, and you know, that was it. That was they called the match. What did you think about that?
Okay, so we go under EBI rules. So the position you were discussing was in one of the overtime rounds where Mason is given that position to an extent. He gets to take Craig's back. He puts on a seatbelt, but he's in a pretty good position to start with. Just to explain how they got there. So the rule says if you were caught in a submission and you make a sound, the sound does not have to be "I quit," or the sound does not have to be the traditional tap. Any kind of sound of discomfort, the referee is now eligible. He doesn't have to, but he is eligible to step in and break it and call that a submission. Because of the body triangle you were talking about, Craig says that it was so tight that it crushed his diaphragm and just forced air out of his body. And if you listen to it, that is true. That is what happened. But the referee still recognized the sound while seeing that Craig is in a catch. And we were talking about the rear naked choke, it moved just under the chin. So now all of a sudden it's a neck crank, which can be very dangerous. And Mason Fowler has, I can tell you, personalize this, my body doesn't bend that way. I'd have been in a lot of trouble. But that's for Craig to decide. Craig knows his own body, and that's for Craig to tap, unless He makes out a sound while in a catch. The referee had to interpret that one way or the other, which is, hey, he's fine, or that's a sound while in a catch. I'm stopping this. That is what the referee elected to do. I don't know that I have an opinion on this, Ben, as much as I can just recap for you what happened. That's what happened.
Yeah, I felt so. Maybe Jim, you have a different opinion, but I felt it was fair, and I felt that it was an unfortunate ending to the match. But that's that's the rules, and that's what should have happened. Maybe since Craig had two hands to tap, if I was the ref, I would have let that one go a little bit longer. But it's nobody's fault, and that's why we're having this rematch, right? What do you think, Jim? Did you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's a really tough call, and anyone who's ever spent time on the mat just knows that those are kind of the sounds of the mat room, where you have those audible groans and grunts, and sometimes, yeah, you're just trying to get out of a position. But it's at the end of the day, it's a tough call. I would like to see it, because these are the grapplers at the highest level. I would have liked to see it go a little bit further, but it is what it is, and this is why we have events that just put them out there again.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Submission Underground is exciting. It's because these things can happen. The overtime basically puts the competitor in a compromised position. I want to ask you real quick, Chael, about Wrestling Underground, and it just kind of popped up. We will talk about it later more, hopefully. But Submission Underground, you use EBI rules, right? So for people that don't know EBI rules, it's basically just you start in the back position, or you start in the spider web, the armbar position, and it's a disadvantaged position, right? With Wrestling Underground, I can see how maybe that type of rule set can actually go to wrestling, right? Since wrestling, I think a way to win, outright, or like the submission in wrestling would be the pin, right? So have you ever thought about that, Chael?
Yeah, in some ways, if I'm interpreting you correctly, as far as the Wrestling Underground, so that will be right after Submission Underground, be a quick break for dinner, come
Yes.
back. It's a whole different show, but I think that you would understand it if you were a grappling fan. Broad stroke here, but one of the big things that distinguishes the two, when you're doing submission, you are looking for submission. You do not have an emphasis on control or position. With wrestling, it's all about control and positioning. So
is there overtime period, Chael?
There is no overtime. No
overtime period.
Criteria. Should time run out, it's 2 3-minute periods. Should time run out, they would default to the first score. That would only be superseded if somebody had a caution or a passivity. That would be an automatic loss if they had one and their opponent did not. But there is a criteria that they will go through. But at the end of 6 minutes, one way or the other, that match is done and somebody wins.
Got it. So
Olympic Games. Yeah, it's freestyle wrestling. That's a rule set forth by the International Olympic Committee. Each match can only be 6 minutes.
Gotcha. My question was, have you ever thought of implementing like an EBI overtime type of rule set to the wrestling matches as well? Like maybe, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, maybe you start in a disadvantaged wrestling position, and that's how maybe you get the pin, you win. Is that something that is that doable? I'm just thinking on the top of my head, because I'm thinking, hey, Submission Underground has this overtime format. What if we took that overtime format and applied it to a wrestling rule set? Could there be something there?
Ben, I will tell you, I like it. I have thought of that right after you said it. So when we get done here, I'll make a phone call. I'll take all the credit for it, but we'll see where that goes. As of right now, here's the one thing that I don't like. Just me personally, I despise even. Every time we have a grappling event, we have a brand new set of rules. Whoever writes the check and goes to the work of setting up the event and creates the name and brings in the talent cannot get around from an ego perspective that is then their rules. It simply can't be done. There's something about being the guy that brings the event forward that then your rules and your idea have to be put forward. That's not the same sport. You can't go to 5 different organizations and win them all and then be crowned the greatest grappler. It doesn't work that way. Those are all different sports. It's the same as cookies. If you leave the chocolate chips out, you did not make chocolate chip cookies. If you add one ingredient called chocolate chip, now they're a chocolate chip cookie. It's 2 different foods. It's 2 different sports. It's the reason this sport will never be on SportsCenter. It's the reason it's never been on SportsCenter. It's the reason it doesn't deserve to be on SportsCenter. The community itself can't even agree on the goddamn rules. I will see it on a homegrown level where I go to my gym, American Top Team, very big gym, lots of participants and signees up in our area. And the coach has 4 different sports going on. If you're getting ready for Polaris, go join this group. If you're planning to go to the Abu Dhabi trials, you're over here. If you're doing EBI, you're over here. If you're going to fight, it's not the same sport. Every basketball court in the world, you walk in, you put one in the hoop, it's 2 points. Everybody gets it.
Yeah,
the reason
absolutely.
This sport is held and stuck in the tracks is because there's different rules, and that starts with leadership. And leadership has got to let the ego go. The sport has to be something, and whatever it is, it has to be that same something on every mat in the world, or you don't have a sport. And right now, we don't have a sport.
That's a really good point, Sean. You know, I never heard of. Have you ever heard about anybody talking about that topic, Jim? I've never heard anybody bring that up, because I totally agree. I've never really thought about it that way, but that's completely correct. When I'm training my athletes for ADCC, it's a completely different way of training than when we do IBJJF competition. Sub only is another whole different thing. And Chael's absolutely right. Even submission underground, I wanted to talk about, it adds an element that a lot of competitors aren't used to, right? And that's the cage, right? So even in wrestling, the cage will be a factor as well, right? For wrestling underground, if the athletes get pushed up on the cage, that's just, there's no reset, right? You keep going.
Yeah, it'll be similar to the practice room. The practice rooms they're usually mats. Take a high school or a collegiate restroom, they're matted, but in this case, it will be a fence. But if you do ever hit the wall in practice, it's called wrestling off the wall. So you hit the wall, you got to find your way out. Guys don't stay there and spend a lot of time. If for some reason somebody tried to double cross and stay there and use it as the referee will be instructed to break. If anybody grab the fence, that will be a caution and 2 points. I don't foresee that happening, but you have to put those rules in just in case. Other than that, I mean, it's just straight, pure freestyle wrestling. One thing that freestyle wrestling has, because I know I keep using that term, they have something called the push-out rule, which is just what it sounds like. If I take you and I push you out of bounds, I get a point. It's your job to circle and stay in bounds. Because there's a fence, because there's no way to push the guy out, that's the workaround that's been done. Outside of that, there's absolutely no rule changes to what the International Olympic Committee would contest freestyle rules.
Got it. And I think it's not a huge change, but I think it is a little bit different, right? So I remember one of the freestyle matches I watched was Ben Askren taking on Jordan Burroughs, and Ben Askren, I think he was pushed out a couple times, right? That he was scored on because of that, and so now you won't have this. That's not a factor, right? So there's now no push outs in wrestling underground, correct, Joe?
Correct.
Okay.
And then offensively, it can be really to your advantage. If you spend some time there offensively, I'll use an MMA example, but Khabib is such a great wrestler, but not in the open. If you break down how many takedowns he's ever got in the open, it's very small. Once he pushes the guy into the fence, stops his momentum, knows right where he's at, that's when he starts entangling the legs, getting to the body. And I only offer you that because there is an actual skill set that has to be developed for how to use the wall. If you know how to use that in your advantage, it's like having a tag team partner in there.
That's what I'm really interested in seeing, is pure wrestling with the fence, because usually MMA, you use punches, there's kicks, knees, but now we'll finally be able to see, and I'm sure it's probably similar to what you described. What would you call it, Chael? I'm not a wrestler, but I've been in wrestling rooms, wrestling off the wall. Was it?
Yeah, wrestle off the wall. Practice room.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So I'm really interested in that. That's one of the biggest things. All right. Also with wrestling underground, Chael, so this podcast goes out to mostly, grapplers, right? So submission type grapplers, jiu-jitsu guys for the most part, probably gi, no gi, all that, right, Jim? I don't think many wrestlers listen to us. So I want to bring the jiu-jitsu fans into wrestling, because I think that, there's a lot to learn in wrestling. I think jiu-jitsu, the stand-up game is pretty much going to shift toward wrestling very soon if anybody wants to be any good at jiu-jitsu. So with these guys, I look at this list of names. I'm going to be honest. I don't know many of them. I've heard of Mark Hall and I've heard of Deron Winn because of the UFC. If there was one or two guys we should really look out for, who would it be, Chael?
Okay, fun question. I'm glad you brought it up. I would look at the main event, and I'll tell you why. So I would suspect you've heard of Kyle Snyder.
Yes.
Kyle Snyder, one half of the biggest wrestling match of all time. It did air live on ESPN. It was Kyle Snyder, defending world champion, who still had a year of college eligibility left, versus Nick Gizwowski, who was the two-time defending NCAA champion. Snyder gets his red shirt pulled at 12:01 a.m. on midnight of New Year's Day. It's this big announcement with the national tournament being 3 months away. So everyone knew what the finals was going to be. It's going to be the two-time champion against the world champion who wasn't even supposed to be there, comes out of red shirts. At any rate, great match, incredible, leans towards Snyder. Snyder, as great as he was, multiple-time world and Olympic champion, he lost a match in the NCAA finals when he was pinned by a guy named Gadsden. Gadsden and Gizwowski are going to meet up for the first time. They have always been separated in weight class. Gwiz competes at heavyweight. Gadsden is one weight class down of 211 pounds. So even though they're both big boys, Gadsden just has never made that jump. This is the first time ever he's going to make that jump, first time ever he's going to go heavyweight. It's very relevant because Olympic year is upon us. They've moved to the games till 2021. Both of these athletes are qualified for the final wrestle-off, but it has always been believed that Gadsden will go at 211, go head-to-head again against Snyder. Jaden Cox, by example. If Gadsden is to beat Gizwowski, the number one guy in the U.S. to make the Olympic team at heavyweight, I would imagine he's going to change weight classes and all of a sudden be a heavyweight. So this is a match that really should have happened many times, but never could happen because they were separated by a few pounds. They're not separated this time. Match is going to happen.
Got it. So this was the main event. Nick, you know what? I need you to help me with this name.
Coach, just call him Gwiz.
Nick Gwizdowski.
I told you, just call him Gwiz.
I had to say the rest. Gadsden, Gwiz versus Gadsden. I'm sure all the people that follow freestyle wrestling, Olympic wrestling, they're gonna know these guys, right? They're very. Who would you compare these guys name-wise to in submission grappling?
Well, let's see. I mean, these are the top of the food chain. Gwiz is the biggest guy. He's also the most successful big guy. He's got world medals. He's represented us in everything except for the Olympic Games because that's still upon us. So Nick is right there with the Craig Joneses of the world. Craig Jones would definitely know who Nick is. Nick would definitely know who Craig Jones is, and they would show each other respect. They're both walking the streets of New York. I assure you they would stop to say hello to one another, right? The bosses recognize other bosses in those streets. Mark Hall's won 3 world championships, and this is his first time bursting on to the senior scene. I think anywhere you have Sam Brooks, you have a big deal. He's taken on Rakur Rashid. Relevance there, both Penn 10 guys. You got the oldest story in the book, which is Iowa Hawkeye versus the Nittany Lion of Penn State. And I also think I like what you said about Deron Winn. And Deron is not a former wrestler who's coming back to take on the new guard in Colin Moore. While Colin Moore is the new guard, Deron never left. He is Daniel Cormier's head assistant coach. I realize that's of a high school team in California, but either way, he is on the mat every single day. He hasn't slowed down a bit. I think if there's an upset anywhere in these matches, that's the upset. It's a hard day to beat Deron, and Colin is young. This is his first year on the senior level. He should have been at the national tournament less than 5 months ago as a collegiate athlete. I think in many ways he still doesn't have his man strength. I think it's a boy against man. I think people are overlooking Winn.
Yeah, so shout out to BetDSI for picking up some of these betting lines, but Colin Moore right now is a 2-1 favorite over Darren Winn, and Gwiz is also 2-1 favorite. So those are it was Gwiz. We want to look at Colin Moore, was it? And then was the Brooks, right? Brooks. That was the third one.
It's fun, yes. Sammy Brooks is going to be very fun. He comes.
Mark Hall also, yes. I've heard the other guy I've heard of is Hall. Mark Hall. He's accomplished a lot in wrestling, I believe.
Yes, cadet world champion multiple times over, junior world champion. This is his first year on the senior level. So
hey, Chael, bringing it back to submission grappling. What is your opinion? Where do you think we are on the evolution of rule sets? We were talking rule sets a little bit earlier, and me personally, I do like the EBI rule sets ultimately because it promotes submissions, ending it. But now the biggest criticism is the strategy that's played. A lot of people, they'll try to stall for the overtime period. Do you think there's room to improve on these rule sets in an effort for a unified rule set that does get it on ESPN, that does make it an Olympic sport, dare I say? Where do you think we are in that evolution of a solid rule set?
I think it's tough. I think it's very tough to get involved. I will never get involved with the rules. I go under the EBI rules. Whatever committee sits down and forms those, I won't be in the room and I won't give input. I just think it's a conflict of interest. That doesn't mean as a fan, I don't hear exactly what you're saying. We cannot have a product that we want people to watch and it's exciting, and then just have these nothing happening where somebody's taking advantage of the rules by not engaging. But that's a tough concept. I mean, I've heard it both ways. I've seen guys go out and sit down and then argue that the other guy didn't sit down on top of them. You're looking around going, guys, it's 5 minutes. Anything goes as long as no strikes are thrown. Get up off your ass and go get a hold of him and drag him down. If that's a skill that you lack, I don't think that we need the rules to come to your aid. It sounds like you need to work on this in the gym with your coaches. Anything goes for 5 minutes. You're sitting down. I think you got a pretty weak argument if you're the guy sitting down. Get up and go and get a hold of him. The only way we can fix it, from my perspective as a promoter, is the same way Dana had to deal with it in MMA. The unified rules are what they are. He doesn't make them or have a hand in them. He gets informed what they are, but he will come out and tell you, if you go out and try to game these and be boring, that's fine. You're just not coming back here. I'm looking for guys who are exciting. I'm looking for a guy to get up off of his ass and go and get a hold of another guy. I think that's a two-way street, and there does seem to be a little bit of a misconception that whoever chooses it first, whoever is on his feet first and tells the other guy, get up, then the crowd buys in, oh, hey, that guy's wrong. Or the guy that sits down first and says, come here, then the crowd's all on his side. Well, wait a minute, he's waving the guy in. Why isn't the guy coming? That's not how it works. It's 5 minutes. Anything goes. Don't punch him. Don't kick him. Don't eye gouge him, and don't bite him. Other than that, anything goes. And if you can't figure out how to make that exciting, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, I think, Jim, the 5 minutes is actually a good thing for this because, it doesn't give you quite enough time to, let's say, just play your normal game. You have to go for the submission, right? Like if we rolled, and you just spent the whole time shelled up, it would be hard for me to submit you with my normal game, but I might bust out some crazy stuff. So that's I think that's one of the good things with the 5 minutes. And then it just goes right into overtime, right? So overtime, we see, either the back position or the arm bar. Chael, what would you pick if you were in EBI overtime? Which one do you pick?
I would take the back control. That's personally, I just have a little bit better time hanging on to somebody there, and I'm not the best finisher from that position, but I'm pretty good at keeping it. And where the clock matters and you are rewarded for time on top versus escape time, I think a great strategy, Ben, is make sure you can escape quickly. I see a lot of guys where they protect their neck and they're not in any trouble there, but they're not out in time. And strategically, that comes back and bites them. You really got to lower those hips, protect your neck while freeing your lower body. I would put a little bit more emphasis on getting out. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right. You're asking me what I would do. I'm learning new things about rules. Like I'll see right when I think I have this whole thing figured out, somebody else will come in and show some kind of adaptation that they worked on. Fabiano Schörner does this every match. Fabiano Schörner is like the master of the manipulation of any rule set you have. He's so good at how he sees it, but he will do things or bring athletes in that none of us even thought of. And it's always so clear once you see it the first time. Kind of like Craig Jones. I mean, Craig Jones and some of these Danaher guys, they really are years ahead on specific series, specifically on the reefs and the sweeps and getting one leg and getting to the ankle, specifically on that series. They're teaching us things, and it's going to take a period of time until the sport is caught up.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, because of the overtime. This is one of the reasons why when I see people like Craig Jones and other big favorites, I always tell people, anything can happen. And Craig Jones was like a minus 800 favorite in the last match, right? And you saw something, random. No, I wouldn't say random, but kind of like a uncommon occurrence can happen, right? So this is what makes, in my opinion, Submission Underground, more exciting than say something where I feel like a lot of matches in grappling tend to have a predetermined outcome because there's the rules kind of make it so it just is that way, and it's that way with a lot of jiu-jitsu tournament style competitions. I see a lot of people in Submission Underground picking the armbar position nowadays. Like one of them is Amanda Lowen, right? So she is fighting Jillian Robertson, who's pretty well-known UFC fighter, and I'm very excited to see what Jillian's going to do in a pure grappling setting. I really don't know what to expect here because Amanda's a pure grappler, but Jillian, she has the aggression. What do you think? What do you think about this match, Chael? I know you talked about it a little on your channel.
Well, it's very interesting. Amanda's very strong, right? I mean, she's one of these gals that before you get around anything else, she has a physicality. I could compare that to Chris Cyborg, Julia Budd over in Bellator. Before you even get to the skills, can you match her on the scale? Can you pass the eye test? I mean, Amanda looks like she could do a lot of pull-ups, okay? I mean, but then you have Jillian Robertson. She's setting records. She either just broke Ronda Rousey's record or she just tied the record. I don't even know that I need to know which it is. I think you get my point. This girl knows how to submit people. Look, if you can submit somebody while they're trying to punch you in the face and elbow, it's very hard to do. We don't see a ton of submissions, at least comparatively now, to the way we did in the early UFC back in the 90s and 93 through 98. I mean, people started to learn the basic positions, and when they're dealing with attacks coming under, it makes it more difficult. It takes a little bit more time to set up. So when you take those away, I'm very curious to see what Jillian can do. I can also just tell you from the other side of the desk, she is more than eager to get in here. She knows full well who Amanda is. She's watched Amanda. She's seen Amanda at tournaments and in training rooms, and she has no doubt that she can beat Amanda. The same's true on the other foot. Amanda's watched Julia and said, what's she talking about? She thinks she can beat me. Well, whenever you have two people that just can't seem to agree on something like that and are both very sure they can win, you've got to have the match.
All right, very excited for that one. I'm always curious to see how, athletes that are in other sports do in pure grappling. I'm very curious, and I think, maybe this was the reason you started wrestling underground, Chael. I'm very curious to see some of these wrestlers go to submission grappling. Is that a plan in the future?
It's one that has been played with. For right now, just as a personal wrestling fan and an advocate, the opportunity has been so limited, and we do have the Olympic Games upon us. It's very important to me to get our top guys that we're about to send overseas, put the uniform of the country on and have them go compete for medals. It's really important right now to get them the first chance to get on the mat and get some of these matches in. I like where your head's at. I saw something like this between Patrick Downey and Gordon Ryan, and they both traded. I don't know if you caught that, but they did one full wrestling match and then one full no time limit gi match. So, and it went exactly how you would think, one apiece. There was something fun to that. This isn't necessarily what we're trying to do at Wrestling Underground, where we hope that we're all going to have some fun, but we're not doing it for fun. This isn't for oddities. It's iron on iron. It's getting guys experience, finding out who really is sharp enough to go into the trials and then ultimately represent the country at the 2021 Olympic Games.
Got it.
Chael,
one other guy. Go ahead, Jim.
So to all that, you're around these guys, making matches, making events happen. You used to compete at the highest level in both wrestling and MMA. Do you ever get the itch to participate in your own event? Again.
Oh, never in my own event, just because of what I'm going to bring in my own opponent. It might be weird, but yes, I get the itch. You might remember Metamoris, and I hold Metamoris. That was one of the great grappling events ever put on, in my opinion. I took in 3 or 4 of those, twice as a competitor, couple more times as a fan. Wonderful memories. I thought the production was through the roof. I thought the way that the Gracie family treated everybody was so wonderful. I never got the full story as to why that's no longer, but it does make me sad. And I will tell you that really was a great event. Abu Dhabi is one where, every 2 years, if you're lucky enough to get an invite and you have somewhere to compete, I would never turn down those opportunities. And yeah, man, I think about it all the time. I watch these guys and I'm proud of them. I'm learning from them, but I'm also jealous. That's true.
Yeah, and I noticed you still look fit as a fiddle. Like you never spent. There it is, the pythons.
These little well, thank you for that, Jim.
Well, what's your weight right about now?
220 pounds.
Boom, there it is. That's fighting weight right there.
Weight. I've lost weight in the pandemic. Actually, I lost a little bit of weight.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I never realized how much time I spent at Taco Bell till the pandemic came.
Oh man, yeah, I've reaffirmed my love of eating during this pandemic.
Why not? You got to do something, right?
Yeah, there it is. All right, Ben.
All right. Yeah. Hey, Chael. So I just got a couple more things for you. I want to, you brought up who to look out for in Wrestling Underground. I want to talk about somebody who I think people should be looking for in Submission Underground, which is, I'm big on this kid, Roberto Jimenez. What are your thoughts on him?
That dude's impressive.
Biggest favorite on the card.
Yes. And so, first off, look, second generation, his old man's a tough guy. His old man's a black belt. Kind of like Floyd Mayweather. If you grow up and your coach lives one door down, you've got a leg up. If you can walk into your garage and there's a heavy bag in Floyd's case, or in Jimenez's case, there's some mat space and you've got a coach built in 24/7. I mean, there's some legs up right there. And another thing about this kid, and Gordon Ryan did a great job of this, but compete anytime, anywhere with anyone. Don't worry about the wins and losses. Worry about getting better. There's a certain age frame where that should be your only focus. There's a certain age range where you got to kind of protect yourself a little bit too. But he's in the age range of go out, shake hands, whether it's going to likely be a good night or a bad night. I mean, he took on Wagner and Cyborg in the same day. It does not matter how big you are or what you weigh. I said this guy walks around about 192 pounds soaking wet, no more than that. He's currently ranked number 5 in the heavyweight no-gi, and they qualify him for that because he does so damn many heavyweight events. He's done 2 tournaments, 3 men in 1 night, 2 tournaments since the last time I've seen him, and I saw him 5 weeks ago. This guy is finding matches all the time. Anybody, any size, any way you want to do it. And he's not overly outcome-based right now. He's performance-based. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to try, offensively and defensively. Give me a live body and let me try it. It's just the right attitude. And guys with that attitude that are not scared to lose, and he will lose. He will lose more. When you get in the fire as deep and as many times as he insists on putting himself there, he's going to get burned a couple of times. But you fast forward 5 years, he's following the same trajectory as Gordon Ryan. To make believe that he's not the next Gordon, man, I'm pretty bullish on that guy. Skill-wise, but also attitude-wise. He's the real deal.
Yeah, I think he's the real deal too. I think he's under 21, right? He's like 20 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah.
He's really young. But anyway, all right. Let me just recap. Submission Underground is going to be on UFC Fight Pass August 30th, which is this Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's 3 Pacific. And then is it immediately afterwards, Chael, is going to be Wrestling Underground?
No, Submission Underground will go for 2 hours, but at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific is when we will officially open the window for the inaugural Wrestling Underground.
Got it. So we have a 1 hour break. Okay.
That's a loose hour, but yeah, it'll be about an hour.
Got it. Jim.
This part I can say for sure. At 9 o'clock is when wrestling is. At 6 o'clock is when submission is. That much I can tell you for sure.
Yep. Also, if you guys want to follow, the sports betting on Submission Underground or Wrestling Underground, check out BetDSI. Jim, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I would just like to thank you, Mr. Sonnen, for being a guest today and talking about Submission Underground. And, man, all the best to you on future events, and I hope to do this again.
Mutual, you got it. Good talking to you guys.
Thank you, Chael.
All right, thank you, Chael.